the game we've been waiting for. Tomorrow, the Lionesses face the Matildas. It's the Women's World Cup semi-final. Australian newspapers have been taking swipes at England. Look at this front page of Monday's Australian Daily Telegraph, reading, "Now for the Poms." The sporting rivalry between England and Australia does, of course, run deep. This summer's battle for the men's Ashes, it was marred by those accusations of unsportsmanlike conduct, controversial stumpings. Even I sort of began to follow cricket, and I never do. And the change of ball on the fourth afternoon of the final rest. You can tell, final test, you can tell that was scripted, not from my head, because I don't know anything about cricket, but I did follow Piers' outrage on it. Piers was targeted by the Aussie newspapers for the outrage, accused of being a crybaby. So who will come out on top tomorrow? How will they deal with all this rivalry and tension? Is it all just silly nonsense? I'm joined from Sydney by the Australian and Aston Villa footballer Emily Gilnick and by the former English Lioness Leanne Sanderson. Ladies, thank you ever so much for making time on this big eve ahead of this big event. Emily, I'll come to you first, given that you're the host or the co-host this year in Australia, and I hear that the atmosphere down there has been absolutely stunning. How much pressure are the Australian side going to be under then to perform?
Yeah, look, it's always massive pressure when you're at a World Cup, let alone a home World Cup. I think this year for us, the magnitude of this event has been bigger than we ever expected. So, yeah, there is a lot of pressure, but at the end of the day, you'd much rather in your backyard than in England. So, you know, we'll take that pressure with open arms.
Okay, Leanne, coming to you. I mean, not at all biased in this, but I am, of course, English, and I do love the Lionesses. But dealing with that pressure then, having that home side in Australia really cheering the Matildas on, how are the Lionesses going to deal with that?
I think, you know, we've shown how impactful the fans can be in last Euros summer. You know, when we won the Euros, I think it was amazing. And I think having that home field advantage really does help. But I think these Lionesses are ready. I think the Matildas have had a really good tournament so far. And I think having the fans on their side will certainly help. We saw England in the last game against Colombia. Most of the fans inside the stadium were Colombian, and it was very hostile. And I think the Lionesses now have learned to be resilient, and they've become a bit of a mentality beast. But one thing I will say is the only team that have beaten us under Serena Wiegman have been Australia. So, you know, having that in their back pocket might help. But I think it's been a fantastic tournament so far. And Australia have really these players in Australia have really put themselves on the map, because similar to how the Lionesses were last summer, no one was really looking up. Nobody was really respecting the sport. And now everybody's looking up, and now everybody's respecting. And it's great to see.
That's great that you think there's been that sea change in a year. Emily, do you agree with that? We've been debating on the show over the last week or so where there has been a sea change this year and people are respecting the sport as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I played for Aston Villa and I was in England, I was actually at the Euro final. I saw what it did for a nation there, and I saw what it did for women's football, particularly with the crowd attendance that we had later that season. So I'm hoping Australia has the same shift, because to be honest, women's football and football alone in Australia has been at the lower end of the pecking order. So I'd like to see it, you know, to see it get right up there, because we've got AFL and rugby over here. I'm not sure if you guys are too familiar with AFL, but it's really the sport of Australia. So, you know, this World Cup needs to be the turning point. A major change needs to happen with the sport.
And look, Emily, Leanne was just talking there about the hostility that there could be in the stadium tomorrow against the England players. Do you think it will be friendly rivalry, or do you think there's actually serious hostility between England and Australia on the pitch tomorrow?
Look, to be honest, I mean, there's going to be a bit of, I think it's more friendly rivalry. I know that the girls, you know, the Matildas are desperate to get their hands on some silverware. It's been a long time coming. We've always just come so close. Now this is the furthest we've ever come. You know, I did manage to go to an England game myself, and there's still some passionate English here over in Australia that support the Lioness. I know they're a big public figure. Like, it's going to be a big clash. Unfortunately, we're probably going to dominate the ticket sales, I believe. So it's going to be a friendly rivalry. A lot of the girls play against each other in the WSL. So, you know, there's no unfamiliar territory there. There's no unfamiliar faces. So definitely probably our biggest game to date ever. So I'm just really looking forward to see how it pans out.
I agree. You're probably going to dominate ticket sales, but we'll be watching here from England and the UK, and I know people around the world will be as well. Piers has been watching from the US, tweeting about it endlessly. Leanne, what is the pressure like going to play a team in its home stadium like that? You've played 50 caps for England.
Yeah, I played in 2 World Cups, and the last time we reached this moment was when in 2015, and we unfortunately lost to Japan. But I think the Lionesses now, after having that little bit of taste of silverware last summer, I think you can see against Colombia at the end of the game, they weren't celebrating. They were probably focusing. You could see no one was really running around the field. They weren't really focused on all the fans and the music. They were focused on the next game and the challenge that was ahead. And I think this game against Australia is not a foregone conclusion. You know, I don't want to be that typical English person. Every time we get to a World Cup, we think we're going to win. You know, we haven't won anything since 1966, a World Cup. So, you know, with regards to that, it's always going to be difficult. But what I will say, you know, along with what we were saying before, there's a lot of these players that play in the WSL and a lot of these players are familiar with each other. And I think that'll be something that will be a friendly rivalry. But I agree, it's a massive game for us.
It's going to be a good one.